Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of the Wisdom Save podcast. This is the promised one, in its own way, and I don't mean that like an oracular chosen one.
It means I promised it twice in previous episodes.
Correct, and it's finally time that we did it, especially since now we have very excitedly and enjoyably to both of us done 2 of those questionnaire survey episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed doing them. We hope you enjoyed getting a little lens into our characters. But while we were editing them and recording them and uploading them, the 2 of us, and we talked about it in the episodes as well, had realized that while we've given you all a lot of information about 2 of the campaigns from which those questionnaires and surveys came from, we haven't really talked about our Ravnica campaign.
Mm-hmm. Which is a damn shame because I love our Ravnica campaign.
No, and that's why it's high time that we actually talk about it on the podcast and introduce both how our take on it and also the setting. Mm-hmm. Ravnica in a lot of ways is the perfect blend of both my interests and the perfect blend of the stuff we talk about on this podcast, which is again why it's so strange that we haven't talked about it yet. But the thing about, so for those of you who play Dungeons and Dragons, you know that there are a variety of different settings in which a game of Dungeons and Dragons can take place. There are a number of canonical settings that they have campaign books for, that has lore and world building. You can plop your characters into that setting and kind of take it from there and use that as a backdrop. Lots of people play using their own homebrew settings, their own custom created worlds, and sometimes they make it up as they go. Sometimes it's a pre-built world that they've been using for a long time. Ravnica is a little bit different than those. Ravnica is its own enfranchised setting, but it is something that was also taken wholesale from a different market, from a different media. Both owned by Wizards of the Coast, but Ravnica is one of the planes of the Magic the Gathering multiverse, which you know. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, we talk about Magic-related things a lot on this podcast. Never the cards, really. Even though it's one of my biggest interests in the world.
It's because I don't care about the cards.
Right. Hannah doesn't like trading card games, which is reasonable and probably a big money saver.
Kind of, I guess. I like the cards more because of the pretty art.
Sure.
I'll buy cards because then I'm like, oh, cool. I also have, for someone who hates card games, I have oddly good card luck.
You do. I find that's how it works a lot. People who aren't as interested, if you buy a couple loose packs, you always get good stuff.
So I'll buy them and I'll look at all the pretty art and stuff, and Ken will be like, "Oh my god, you got a Planeswalker!" And I'll be like, "Cool. Do you want it?"
Yeah, I don't need it.
Except that there are some that I keep if they're pretty enough.
Yeah. You've got a couple at least.
But I'm much more interested in the lore, the art books, the worlds. I don't care that much about the people. A little bit, but
sure.
Not really that much about their storylines. Fine.
Yeah, if you're not interacting with them in an interactive role playing medium, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I don't really.
That's understandable. You need stakes. You need the character to be personally relevant to you somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally reasonable.
The only other thing that I do for the cards is it's fun to open them up and watch Ken get excited about it.
Yeah. Hype is one of my superpowers. I'm very good at building it, and I'm very good at having it even in ridiculous situations. It's not that big of a deal, but I'm really amped about it. But yes, so that being said, considering we spend a lot of time on here talking about Dungeons and Dragons, talking about our campaigns, talking about how to build campaigns and settings, and the color pie is kind of a perfect mix. You're going to get a little bit of all of that when it comes to learning about this world and this setting in particular. So, we're going to talk about our campaign. That was kind of my plan for this one. But before we talk about what happened in our campaign and who our characters are, which they've already gotten a glimpse of if they've watched the other 2 survey ones, but I want to give you all an introduction into the setting, and especially a number of different like special terms that will be relevant to know if you aren't familiar with the setting. So, without further ado, Ravnica is both a world and also one city. One very, very large city. I believe the term for it is an ecumenopolis. Like on a much grander scale than like a metropolis, which is just a big city. An ecumenopolis is like it's a world city. It is, and that is basically definitionally what Ravnica is. It is an entire world that has been overtaken by one city that has grown to the point that now like different districts of the city are effectively their own countries.
Yeah.
But all of it is under the same sort of singular, quote unquote, jurisdiction. But before that, modern day Ravnica, there's a historical version of Ravnica we don't get a lot of information about, but more than 10,000 years before the beginning of our campaign, and also kind of like the beginning of relevant Ravnica lore,
Right.
there was a war that tore across the entirety of the world, and not yet an entire city. 10 different armies all battled for control of this world in a major conflict that ultimately ended with the creation of a magically binding contract of immense global magical power known as the Guild Pact. The leaders of each of the 10 armies, which were ancient ancient beings, otherwise referred to as a Perrin, they were the ones who signed the Guild Pact and effectively became the first guild masters of Ravnica. There are 10 guilds on Ravnica, and each of those 10 guilds correspond to one of the 10 possible 2-color combinations when you're using the color pie. And each of them stand for at least an aspect, one lens, one frame of how that color combination interacts with itself and interacts with a world as a whole. It is, each of them are kind of an extreme interpretation of that color, with many varying peoples within of like different opinions and styles and structures, but they all kind of fall under that one major lens, representing each of the 10 2-color combinations. The Guild Pact spelled out specific roles for each of the guilds within the infrastructure of Ravnica, which allowed the city to grow while the guilds coexisted in relative peace. But the true power of the Guild Pact was the strength of its magical binding, which basically prevented absolutely large-scale violence amongst the guilds. That brought the city into this 10 millennia long cycle of constant growth, no violence and war to slow or impede progress, and eventually led to the city becoming completely constructed over everything. All of the world effectively became a singular civilization. This worked in the benefit of some of those guilds and very much against some of the others, especially those that were more connected to the wild areas and natural spaces of Ravnica, of which there are precious few anymore. So, with that being the background, we are now in, I think it's like 10,075 is like the official year that it is right now. That is basically like this point in Ravnica where all of the guilds kind of have their footholds in the world. They all have their goals and plans, and everyone is kind of like constantly vying in this like physical, political, territorial power struggle for control or influence over aspects of the city. And that's where the 10 guilds come in. So I gave them all, when everyone in my party was creating their characters, I gave them all a different sort of like synopsis or a snippet of each of the different guilds and how they all interacted with the world and like what their place in the world was. which obviously you remember from way back.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Oh, no, okay, and it's a particular of your character, because you already had an idea going in, that's right.
Oh, yeah, I already knew what I was doing we were like, oh, let's do the Ravnica campaign. I was like, I got my character, I know where I'm putting him.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give because each of these were pretty in-depth descriptions, I'm going to give a brief sort of synopsis version of each of the 10 guilds so that it's not just a whole podcast. Because I want to get to the point where we actually talk about the campaign.
I'll give a brief 1-hour synopsis on all of these guilds.
Well, that's my whole point. It's like I could talk for 6 minutes about each of them.
For real, though, you could talk about each of these guilds for a long time.
What does that mean?
No. I didn't mean you and you, generally you, not you.
I know, I'm just fucking with you.
Like, me and you sat here once during the week and just sat here and talked about 2 different guilds and no, more than 2. But we talked about a few different characters of ours.
Yeah.
And like 2 of the guilds, at least in particular, for 6 hours.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're all deep and they're all they play into the geopolitical structure of Ravnica in really interesting ways. But I'm going to give you a snapshot. And I'm also going to give the colors that the guild is connected to so that those of you who have listened to our Color Pie podcast will get an immediate sense of how these guilds are supposed to interact before I describe any of the real details. So going in technically order, if you were to read a tablet of the guilds somewhere in Ravnica, the first of the 10 guilds is known as the Azorius Senate. They are a white and blue aligned organization, and they are the primary government and legislative body of Ravnica. Guild members of the Azorius are typically lawyers, judges, prosecutors, police, and governors of the city plane. They obviously tend towards a lawful nature in this sense. They divide their responsibilities into 3 major organizations, which they refer to as columns, and each of them basically is... Yeah, they're called columns. I don't know if you've come across that in the actual game.
I don't care about the Azorius.
Right, yeah, that's true. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I think Alistair was picking grass or something.
Yeah, he was ripping fistfuls of grass out of the dirt. Right,
perfect. But the 3 columns, for all intents and purposes, what you need to know about those is that they're very similar to the branches of American government. There's the judicial branch, there's judges, the legislative branch who write the laws and lobby for things and stuff like that, and then there's the law enforcement, private investigators, like police and law mages of Ravnica. There is another guild that the Azorius shares street patrolling responsibility with, though the Azorius are typically more responsible for they're more responsible not so much for maintaining the peace so much as they're responsible a little bit more for kind of more like crime investigation. They're more of a CSI FBI kind of group to the Boros Legion, which we'll be talking about next, which are more of a street police force. Mm-hmm. In terms of Dungeons and Dragons, the Azorius commonly include humans and Vidalcan, the bald, blue-skinned race of humanoids that are native to Ravnica and several other magic worlds. They are commonly classes like bards, clerics, fighters, paladins, and wizards. And their guild is led by a sphinx, a very powerful sphinx named Isperia. Her title is Supreme Judge, and her law magic is binding and perception is inscrutable, according to the Azorius Senate. So that's the sort of legislative group. They used to be responsible for maintaining the guild pact. That has kind of changed, but now they still work alongside the being who represents the guild pact. Second guild being the Boros Legion.
What are the colors for the Azorius?
Oh, I said it at the beginning. Oh. They're white and blue.
White, blue.
Yeah. The second guild we're talking about is the Boros Legion. Mm-hmm. Your personal favorite.
Fucking God. We're talking about my least favorite ones right in the beginning.
Yeah, it's because it's all the white ones first. I'm going in the color pie order.
Of course they're first.
The Boros Legion are both the, quote, bringers of justice and the military police force of the plane. They double as a security force and a standing army in case of large-scale assaults. Most of the day-to-day members of the Boros Legion are responsible for the patrol and upkeep of major precincts or districts, trying to stop raids by Gruul anarchists or assassinations at the hands of the Dimir or the Golgari. They're organized in a military-style hierarchy, angels leading the guild from the top and sort of serving as a pseudo-religious figure for their like the structure of their guild and to draw divine magic from, down to patrolling sky knights and foot soldiers on the streets. The general attitude of most Boros legionnaires is that they're champions of justice, or they're heroes trying to be good and stop villains. They're responsible for bringing criminals to justice, typically by force. They're cops. Like the Boros are, and they're also the military. But
you need at least 3 of them to pull over somebody who littered.
Yeah, right. The comparisons to the American police force are not necessarily correct, but in many cases they aren't necessarily incorrect either. There is certainly ease of abuse of power amongst any powerful.
I feel like the best way to describe them would be like, if you took a random handful of cops from every country on Earth.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like...
They all have the general same goal.
Right.
But how they go about it is very different individual to individual.
And who they deal with is, too, depending on the district, there are different threats, quote-unquote, that require their attention. The really boring districts will have kind of annoying Boros soldiers who bother you for simple things, whereas when you're right on the front lines on the edge of the rubble belt, you're mostly just fighting anarchists. Which is like... I mean, there's complications with any of those, but there's a very different frame of perspective of how those particular members of the Legion approach their job, depending on the intensity of the fight, I guess. Common races for the Boros include humans, goblins, minotaurs, of which there are many on Ravnica, and Vyashino, which Vyashino, yeah, is how it's spelled as well. And they're basically the lizard folk of Magic's planes. They're skinnier, tend to be more like dexterous than your average lizard folk. Not quite frilled, depending on world to world. But on Ravnica, they're kind of just like thin, like kind of slippery lizard folk with big claws and whiptails.
They're like those little green lizards from Florida.
Yeah. Actually, like writ large, but yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. They tend to be classes like cleric, fighter, paladin, or even ranger in the case of some of the bounty hunters and their sky knights, or sorcerers and wizards that specialize in typically fire or light magic. Their guild's leader is the Archangel Aurelia. She is known as their war leader and an angel who serves justice on flaming wings and bearing a gleaming sword.
Kaz hasn't met her, has he?
Kaz has not met Aurelia. He has met one of the Battle Grace Angels, which is one of the lowest tiers of angel. The Fire Main Angels are the step above that. And then there are the Angelic Inquisitors. And then the War Leader.
Okay.
So there's really only 4 ranks of angels. All of them are considered to be impressive.
Yeah, highly above humans.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a strict hierarchy in the Boros for how people advance through the ranks and are shown different levels of respect. And that strict hierarchy does also prevent non-angels from getting to a certain point in the hierarchy. A non-angel will never be a war leader of the Boros.
Right.
And in case I didn't mention, because I feel like I actually didn't mention on that one, they're white and red aligned.
Yeah.
Mixing the idea of peace through order with freedom through non-restriction. the white aspects of order and the red aspects of freedom. They see themselves as justice seekers and freedom fighters who are protecting Ravnica and making it better for the average civilian. A very dichotomous approach. They're enemies, and sometimes they don't agree with their own tactics or will tend to contradict themselves.
Right.
The third guild is House Dimir. They're referred to as House Dimir or the Dimir Houses, though they're not actually organized into a particular house or structure. They're kind of a more loosely affiliated group.
What Dimir house are you, Gryffindor? Or?
Yeah, right, Jesus. And that's mostly just to kind of throw suspicion off of them and confuse people who would be prying into their business. They are blue and black aligned. They are considered to be the couriers and peddlers of information and intrigue throughout the city of Ravnica. Normally, they're information brokers, messengers, and librarians who deal in information gathering and information exchange. But secretly, beneath the shadows and in the hidden places of the city, they are an elaborate magical spy organization whose goals are unknown and even more mysterious. Some members of the guild operate on a surface level, serving as disinformation and propagandist specialists who are attempting to ensure the population of Dimir, ensure the population that the Dimir are plotting nothing. Shopkeepers, couriers, and librarians tend to count themselves among those members, but it's not exclusive to the Dimir. But others, those with great talent, are invited to explore the deeper mysteries of the Dimir. Their spies are almost always living a double life as a member of a different guild, and that association is kept intentionally secret. The common races of the Dimir include humans, half-elves, of which there is a relatively low population on Ravnica, changelings, and vampires. And common classes include things like monks, rogues, wizards, anything that can be sneaky or invisible or tricky, or control minds. Their guildmaster is a mysterious shapeshifter by the name of Lazav, whose true form is unknown to all, and who can be anyone, anywhere, at any time. We'll talk about some in-character theories about who people think he might be.
There's something I was going to say about the Dimir.
About the Dimir?
I can't remember it anymore.
Well, think about it, and then maybe we can bring it back up when we get into the character development stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Hang on to that.
We'll get there. I can't hang on to it. It's not here anymore.
Well, I mean, dig for it.
Dig for it.
Yeah. Send your spy masters and messengers out to go find the information.
Okay.
Yeah. Just think like a Dimir would. Do you want to just go for it, or do you want me to move on?
No, I have no idea what I was going to say. Keep going.
Okay. The fourth guild we're here to talk about is the Golgari Swarm. They are black and green aligned, dealing with the cycle of green's respect for life and nature. What's up?
No one. It was the thing about the Dimir. It's that nobody knew they existed until recently.
That's right. Yeah, up until about 75 years ago, the Dimir there were only considered to be 9 guilds on Ravnica, and none of the regular population knew anything about the Dimir. A plot by their former Perrin and guildmaster essentially forcefully revealed them to the world, which was part of his ploy that ended up failing, and now everybody knows about them, which makes their job a little bit harder to do. But anyway, so the Golgari, which are the next one, they are black and green aligned. They deal with green's interest in life and nature, and black's interest in decay and death, and kind of follow that cycle. They are a collection of undercity dwelling urchins who thrive on the decay and darkness of Ravnica. But the guild is also responsible for a number of public works. They maintain the elaborate sewer systems of the city and are responsible for waste management facilities and underground agricultural sectors. Ravnica is a perpetual city, so finding areas for agriculture is hard. They have solved this problem by moving the agriculture underground. In these plots called rot farms, which grow in the Undercity, which is kind of like the Underdark of Ravnica, is the best way to put it, they will grow food that can be used to feed the population of Ravnica. This group thrives on the cycle of life and death. All things are born, and all things die, and the Golgari sees this as an opportunity to grow and control aspects of the population. Though they are given a bad rap as being morbid, they also are responsible for a number of public goods. The Golgari are responsible for feeding the homeless, providing housing, and curing illnesses and disease for citizens of Ravnica who may not be able to afford those services. But they only ask that you look the other way when corpses go missing from the street, and they beg you not to ask about what they use for fertilizer. The Golgari have a noted fascination with mushrooms, fungus, and insects, and are persecuted often by guilds such as the Azorius and the Boros. Common races for the Golgari include humans, half-elves, dark elves, and insectoid ant-like humanoids called Krowl. Which you guys haven't seen very many of.
I've never heard of them.
They pretty much exclusively live in the Undercity. They're kind of like dark elves in the sense that they have sunlight sensitivity, so they don't come out onto the surface. Because most people would just think they were monsters and kill them because no one knows about them, and they are giant bug people. So
okay,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely racist towards bug people, but Ravnica doesn't Ravnica's had weird shit come up out of the earth before. So everyone's kind of on edge.
Every time they get up the courage to maybe go up there, something else crawls up that's an actual monster, and they're like, we'll wait.
Never mind. I was going to go buy a corn dog or something, but I guess I'm not doing that.
We'll wait another 50 years.
Yeah, fuck, I got time. Their common classes for the Golgari include druids, usually specializing in spores or insect transformations. Fighters, typically Golgari thugs who protect agents who venture to the surface. Gloomstalker or Beastmaster rangers who prefer insect or reptile companions. Assassins and wizards, typically necromancers. Their Golgari are led by a very powerful dark elven lich named Jarad von Savo, who is the brother of the previous guildmaster named Savra before her untimely death, which happens a lot to people in the Golgari who are in charge.
Oh.
An unfortunate, untimely death that causes power to change.
That's so funny. Just push them off a cliff and they go, oh no.
Yeah, that's why a lot of Golgari high leadership will undergo processes like vampirism and lichdom to prolong their life and protect them from usurpers. Jarad specifically has lived this long because he is a lich. So he's been able to kind of even if someone does successfully kill him, his phylactery just brings him back. He's good.
He goes, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah, you thought I was dead. He is kind of an asshole, but we'll get to that. The next group we will be talking about is the Gruul clan.
Yes!
Hannah's personal favorite. And you will know why very soon if you pay attention to the podcast. The Gruul clans are red and green aligned. Stoking green's passion for tradition and the law of the wild with red's fervor for freedom and the chance to explore your own emotions, especially if those emotions are anger. The Gruul are the anarchists of Ravnican civilization. Gruul considered the barbarian tribes of Ravnica. They once held a prestigious position as the gamekeepers, park rangers, and foresters of the world of Ravnica. As the city slowly but surely began to take over all of the natural zones, their influence got smaller and smaller, until for all intents and purposes they were cast out of society. The Gruul now mainly live in the old, abandoned, ruined areas of the city, referred to as the Rubble Belt, where the old buildings have been reclaimed by nature, And their ultimate goal is to return Ravnica to its original state, before the wars, before the dawn of mortal creation. A state of pure nature. The Gruul are called clans because they are not one but many. They live in small groups, each led by independent leaders and with different methods. But the end goal of all Gruul is the desire for Ravnicans to live in total anarchic freedom, free of governments or laws or the trappings of the city. They enjoy leading raids into the city, where Gruul guild members smash whatever they can find and destroy as much as possible before retreating, being arrested, or killed. Common races in the Gruul include humans, centaurs, goblins, minotaurs, Vieshno, and giants. I use Goliaths in my campaign, even though that's not a canon magic race. They're half giants, I argue.
Yeah, like human giants.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable. The common classes of the Gruul are pretty easy to expect. Nature or war clerics who worship a religion called the Old Ways, the ancient traditions of Ravnica. Barbarians, druids, trained fighters, and hunters and trackers as rangers. They have many different clan leaders amongst many different clans with different styles, functions, and approaches to their weaponized savagery and destruction. But the leaders of the Burning Tree clan, a massive cyclops named Borborygmos, is considered to be the de facto guildmaster. And the Burning Tree clan itself is kind of considered to be like the lead clan of the Gruul.
Yeah.
Where Borborygmos and his clan go, most of the Gruul follow. The next guild, one of the two scientists of the plane.
Oh, yeah?
We have the Izzet League. They are blue and red aligned. Red's passion mixed with blue's desire for knowledge, combining into a unrelenting curiosity. The technological masterminds of Ravnica and the masters of innovation and science, the Izzet believe in the power of experimentation and curiosity. To an Izzet League member, the only way to know something is to do it, and they do it with gusto. Responsible for the engineering and physical science of the city plane, as well as a majority of its invention and public works department, their passion for experimenting is borderline obsessive, and it is not uncommon for Izzet technologies, especially experimental technologies, to explode, teleport the user random places, or otherwise malfunction, leaving the inventor saying, "Oh well, try again." Magi technology, arcane science, and elemental research are the primary interests of them, usually in the form of wizardry or artifice. They mostly are humans, goblins, and Vidalcan. Common classes include artificers, eldritch knights, sorcerers, and wizards. The guild itself is an ancient and brilliant red and blue dragon named Niv Mizzet, who is said to be able to solve mortally impossible equations in the time it takes a raindrop to fall to the ground. Again, his words. But they're the.
That just reminds me of this guy that was on TikTok, and he went up to his girlfriend and he's like, "I'm going to ask you a math question. You have to answer it in 5 seconds, or I'm going to cut the... And you can't use a calculator. I'm going to cut the head off one of these Patricks." And it was like a squishy, like, Patrick star, like...
Oh, shit.
Thing that came out of a gumball machine.
Yeah.
She had, like, 20 of them up on a shelf.
Yeah.
And he put scissors around the neck, and she's like, "No, no." And he's like, "What's 48 plus 48? She's like, "I don't know. He goes to cut it, but she's like, "No."
That's what it is. Like, you better do math or I'm gonna blow shit up.
I want to do that to Niv Mizzet.
Usually, oh god, yeah.
You better tell me what to.
He's already told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the smartest and I believe technically only true dragon on Ravnica, as far as everyone knows.
Can't you accidentally become one with true polymorph?
I mean, you can using shape-shifting magic, but you're not a true dragon at that point. You are a shape-shifted dragon.
Yeah, until you become one by accident permanently, and then you're a dragon.
I mean, if that happens, yeah. But it usually, but the problem is that if that happens, Niv Mizzet has a tendency to find
kill other dragons.
There's a reason why he's the only one. He made sure of it.
T-I-double-gut-er, that spells murder.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. He's a bit of a sassy boy.
He's the only one.
I am the only one. So they're the electroscience nerds. The Orzhov Syndicate being the next of the guilds, and one of the kind of, though they don't necessarily have to be portrayed in that way depending on your player characters, they are sort of one of the major villains of my campaign. The Orzhov.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought
Not is it?
No. I thought you immediately went to Simic, and I was like, what?
What have they done?
All they did was replace, like, Dingles with crab claws. They're evil!
No, the Simic are
We'll get there, we'll get there.
The Orzhov Syndicate is white and black aligned. Very obsessed with bureaucracy for the sake of power. To the Orzhov, there is nothing more important than wealth and power. A guild that favors opulence and decadence above all. The primary purpose of the Orzhov is as the banking system of Ravnica. They print money, hold money, and issue securities to protect the economy of the city plane. They are also, inexplicably, responsible for the many churches of Ravnica, maintaining an interfaith service that spreads across the plane. Although Ravnica has no true gods that have answered prayers for as long as recorded history can remember, the religious worship tends to be toward the parents of Ravnica's guilds, living gods in their own right, and towards the spirits of ancestors who came before. Though in truth, the religious aspect of the Syndicate's responsibility serves mostly as a tool to make the populace feel safe, secure, and comfortable. The Orzhov are the most interested in making money and are purely capitalist in this regard. They are more than happy to do favors, extract debts from you, and the interest on an Orzhov loan always piles up. Notably, debt does not end at life. The guild uses trained necromancers called spirit binders who will call your spirits and bind you to them until such time as your debts are truly repaid. Dark angels and the ghosts of long-dead nobles serve as the leadership of the guild, though anyone with money and a bit of bureaucratic wit can excel within the Orzhov Syndicate. Common races of the Orzhov include humans and vampires, masters of opulence, and common classes include bards, clerical spirit callers, fighters who serve as enforcers, rogues, warlocks with pacts with ghosts, and necromancer or enchanter wizards. Their leader is a council of nobles who all were former patriarchs and wealthy rulers of the entire guild, are referred to as the Obzedat. It's just 5 stinky old guys who died and then decided they were still in charge.
I was going to say, is that Latin for old, white, stinky cheese men?
That's pretty much it, and they are all old, white, stinky cheese men. So it must be perfect. Our next guild is the Cult of Rakdos.
Yay!
Another one of Anna's favorites.
I like them too.
They are red and black aligned. And for those of you who've heard us talk about that color combination, red's freedom combined with black's disregard for the concept of morality as a guiding force leads to them to be the ultimate daredevil hedonists.
The ultimate fun time friend.
They are kind of fun.
Except they won't help you at all.
Yeah.
You're jumping off this cliff, you fall and break your leg. They're like, bitch, I'm going again.
Yeah, absolutely. The Rakdos are as unbound as they come when it comes to the guilds of Ravnica. The number one goal of a member of the cult is to look out for themselves, and hedonism is a virtue in their guild. Though they are legally responsible for Ravnica's entertainment, including plays and festivals, the food service industry, mining, and other blue-collar manual labor or pink-collar service jobs, this is just a way for them to exist in society while following their true pursuits. Utter chaos. To the Rakdos, tomorrow is an illusion that is never promised. And the other guilds with their grand plans for domination or control of Ravnica are wasting their goddamn time. They take themselves too seriously. The Rakdos believe life is a carnival, and they try to live each day to the fullest. Often impressively dramatic, they put on violent shows and plays on the city streets for the purpose of entertainment, but also to cause as much chaos and insanity as possible. They just want Ravnica to stop taking everything so seriously all the time. And what better way to do it than to knock down the foundation of their society through destruction and comedy, depending on where you are and who's in charge. The guild is hedonistic and masochistic, its members delighting in revelry and causing pain to others, and most often they run afoul of the law. People enjoy their shows mocking and ridiculing important political officials or guild members, and they have yet to do anything within Ravnica as a whole that warrants a full-scale assault on their activities. But as the bond of Ravnica society continues to crack, the Rakdos are happy to seize the opportunity and help out if they can. The common races of the Rakdos include mostly humans and goblins. I would argue that if tieflings existed on Ravnica, they'd be here, but they don't. No, there really aren't. Like, you could play, like, I would say if you were in my campaign, you could play a tiefling and just flavor it as, like, one of the, like, imp devils that's like a spawn of Rakdos, and that's like your ancestry, and that's fine, but like for the most part tieflings aren't like an established race. There's just like occasional fiendish people.
Okay.
Most common classes include barbarians, which they refer to as spike bruisers. Their barbarians are typically unarmed and wear spiked knuckles as their primary weapon, or spiked chain whips. Bards, playwrights and performers who mock, ridicule, and incite drama. Fighters with strange weapons like long knives, hatchets, whips, and spiked chains. And warlocks, also referred to as blood witches, who make demonic pacts with Rakdos himself. Their guild is typically run by the Blood Witches in service to the cult on the day-to-day, but their true guild leader is an immensely ruthless and powerful archdevil named Rakdos, who hates to be disturbed from his slumber.
What a sleepy little baby.
He falls asleep for several years at a time, and every once in a while he wakes up and throws out absolute rager.
Must be a Taurus.
He totally is. Big evil Taurus vibes from Rakdos.
Yeah.
Rakdos is such a cool character.
Like,
he's the party god. Yeah. He's like he's basically if like Dionysus from Greek mythology. He's if Dionysus didn't give a fuck at all.
Yeah, just slept.
Yeah.
And then like had a massive party where a bunch of people died.
Yeah, and he was just like, damn, that was cool, though.
Awesome.
Who's gonna... Yeah, because that's the thing, is like, he does pretty much as much murder as he wants, and people, like, can try to stop him, but he's the most powerful demon on the plane of Ravnica, so, like, who the fuck's gonna succeed?
Yeah.
Like...
Is he, like, the only real big demon on Ravnica?
There are other demons on Ravnica. Demons exist amongst multiple guilds. The Golgari have sort of like almost plant-like nightmare horror-ish demons. The Orzhov have demons referred to as haunts, and they're like creepy gargoyle-like demons that live in certain areas of the city and like stalk prey at the night. They're kind of like, they're like assassin-y demons.
Yeah.
The Rakdos definitely have lesser demons that are all spawn of Rakdos. And then the other black guild, the Dimir, have demons they're referred to as horrors or nightmares. And they basically are like mind-fucky demons that like will like draw your deepest insecurities and fears out and then use them as a weapon against you. Next on our lovely list, and the second to last of the guilds of Ravnica, is the Celestia Conclave.
Oh, Celestia, you're there.
It's nature with a spicy twist. The Celestia Conclave are white and green aligned. Their solution to the fact that all of the
they're not nature with a spicy twist. They're like nature with a twist of milk.
Yeah, they're nature with a saltine cracker twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. where all of the guilds that are involved with nature in some way on Ravnica need to find a way to incorporate nature into their everyday life, because nature is fleeting on Ravnica. The Gruul do it by going to the ruined areas and watching as nature reclaims the world. The Golgari move underground to give new bastions of nature where the city won't take it. The Celestia incorporate the beauty and aesthetic of nature into the surrounding buildings and blend nature and civilization together into one topiary paradise.
They remind me of, like, people that are, like, they have, like, all the qualities of really cool nature-y people. Like, they don't wear shoes, and they, like crystals and stuff and herbs, but also they're, like, the ones that are gluten-free, sugar-free, non-GMO, like...
Yeah. And all of them, like, very recently got back from Jesus camp.
Yeah, all of them just got back from Jesus camp, and they want to push all of that onto you.
Yeah.
Really hard.
You clearly haven't gotten the memo yet that what they're doing
You haven't toasted only the outside parts of the brie cheese and eaten that.
Yeah.
The non-fat, non-dairy, non-GMO, vegan outside of the brie cheese.
Yeah. They're the...
Shaped like Jesus.
They're them. A guild that both admires the splendor of the city and the bounty of nature, the Conclave of Celestia blends the two together in works of natural art spiraling out of the city itself. They are the architects of nature within Ravnica, working to preserve nature's bounty within the confines of the city as opposed to beyond the city limits. They serve as conservationists, as well as a charity guild which serves to bring the bounty of the natural world to all the citizens of Ravnica. But on top of this, they also serve as a sort of nature cult that venerates the ancient spirits and the world soul of Ravnica, basically the source of life and magic on the plane. Celestians are often good-natured and somewhat airy in personality, but they tend to be a bit heavy-handed with the way they talk about their beloved guild. Some say enamored, others say brainwashed, but the Celestians truly love their lot in life. Celestians tend to work in collectives together on tasks, believing strongly in the togetherness of society as opposed to the desires of the individual. They raise giant animals to serve as their protectors, and dryads and tree folk serve as the main figures of power and influence in the Conclave. They worship a central spirit whom they believe is the soul of the world and the essence of all life, which is a powerful elemental called Mont Celestia, and that's kind of their religion point. The common races of the Celestia include humans, centaurs, wood elves, high elves, and Loxodon, which are elephant people, for those of you who haven't used one in D&D before. Common classes include bards, who sing to the dryads and sing of the beauty of the Celestian landscape, clerics of nature or life, druids who commune with nature and summon elementals, fighters who train to protect and defend the city, monks who study the elements of air and earth, and rangers who tame giant wolves and ride them into battle. The leader of this of the Celestia is currently Trostani, which is a conglomerate or a fusion of three dryads who sing in harmony and make decisions as one unit, who serve as the speaker and interpreter of the message of the world soul. They're basically a mini hive mind who interpret the signs of nature as a message from the world itself and then sort of serve as its mouthpiece. It's kind of a weird, like, nature pope situation.
I see.
They're hippies. That's the safest and easiest way to put it, is they're hippies.
Well, I mean, I've met plenty of hippies that are way cooler than that.
You have a little bit of a bias against literally all of the white guilds.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hate them.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious, but that makes sense. That's who you are.
Oops.
The last...
I keep hitting my McChicken. Oh. Tell me about this last guild.
Thanks, baby. I was like, yeah, I know. I was seeing you wrinkle it too, and I was like, she's gonna try to slowly eat it. I bet. And
I was thinking about it. Every time you talk about a guild I don't like, I think about eating that McChicken.
Yeah, he was like, well, we got
Tell
one.
me about the Azorius again.
No, we're done with them. We're past that. We have one more. Last but not least, and the only color combination we don't have, the blue and green aligned Simic Combine, the other scientists of Ravnica. Green cares a lot about nature and the natural world. Blue cares about constantly improving and bettering itself. So the Simic seek to understand nature and then improve upon it in whatever way they see fit. Counter to the physical science of the Izzet, the Simic believe that the true science is the study of life, nature, and how we came to be. They are the chief bioscientists, bioscientists and bioengineers of the city plane, and they tend to be the ones inventing medicines and new cures for diseases. Their primary interests and pursuits are the study of the mortal form, and in fact, the study of all natural forms on Ravnica. Their green aspects lead them to find nature as a perfect base to the model of society, and they are very one with nature, namely the seas and oceans of Ravnica. But their blue aspects means they are never truly satisfied with what they're presented with, and there is always room to improve. Thus, Simic bioscientists tend to experiment on usually willing living beings, mostly willing, I should say, attempting to add, augment, or change their physical form to acquire new adaptations to make them stronger. It is not uncommon to see a Simic Combine member with extra limbs, crab-like arms, wings, or even gills adapted onto them so as to, quote, improve upon nature's design. More than 70 years ago, the Simic fell into deep disrepair after a major war. But a tribe of merfolk who lived isolated in the deep oceans of Ravnica found their way finally to the surface and took over the roles of the Simic in the absence of their old leadership. Common races of the Simic include humans, high elves, merfolk, Vidalcan, and something called a Simic hybrid, typically a former human elf or Vidalcan who has adapted their biophysicality to the point that it is no longer recognizable as their previous race.
They're just a crab PP man.
Yeah, they have crab arms or manta ray flippers or fucking like spider legs. They add weird shit on themselves. They tend to be mostly druids, fighters who are part of the Guardian Project. They're the ones that put crab arms on themselves to punch stuff. Monks who meditate on the higher mysteries of the world, and wizards who study transmutation. Their leader in our campaign currently is a merfolk wizard and druid by the name of Prime Speaker Zegana, who is adapted to be able to walk on land and water and has arcanically hardened and reinforced skin that can camouflage. So those are the 10 guilds of Ravnica, the basics behind them. With that, we should jump in and introduce our characters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to give you a chance to talk since I just ran all about it. Give me your rundown. You, as someone who is a player in this Ravnica campaign and our version of Ravnica, tell me a little bit about your character. Tell everyone a little bit about your character, and then talk about like your interpretations of the world.
Well,
you can just start with your character, and then we'll springboard from there. Doesn't have to be crazy.
Obviously, if you listen to the previous 2 episodes, I'm Alistair.
Yeah.
Gruul clan member for now.
Oh yeah. Some drama.
Some shit's happening in the campaign. I would probably be Gruul forever, except for the fact that I think I'm fucking it up. Things about Alistair. He's adorable. Red hair. Heterochromia.
Yeah, what are his 2 different colored eyes?
He's got, God, I always switch him up because of my dyslexia. I think it's gray on the left and blue on the right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
He's got like an auburn red hair, pale skin, druid.
Yes.
Circle of the Moon druid.
Right, which is interesting and unique on Ravnica. And I've explained to you why that's unique.
Right, because apparently me and my mom and potentially Nikia, the leader of my clan, are the only people who can do it on Ravnica.
Not
use animal shapes.
Yeah, not specifically being a circle of the moon, but at least in my interpretation of Ravnica, because it's a little more consistent with magic lore. Druids don't naturally have the ability to shapeshift into animals. Typically speaking, except in some rare situations, NPC druids on Ravnica aren't shapeshifters. Player characters will be, because I don't want to rob a certain class of its abilities.
Right.
But typically speaking, there aren't people who can freely shapeshift without the use of powerful magic on Ravnica, and to do so is considered an omen of great power and connection to Ravnica's wilds.
He's part of the Zhurta clan.
Which the Zhurta clan are basically the most religious.
Yeah.
I mentioned a little bit when I was talking about the girl about the old ways. They basically believe that before Ravnica was even remotely settled, it was wild, untamed nature, and that there was this great and powerful boar god named Ilharg who trampled the dirt that made the world and then went to rest. And they believe that as is right by the Gruul, when nature is completely cloaked by civilization and chokeholded to the point that nature cannot thrive, which many Gruul argue is now, because you're just living in ruined parts of city and not really unspoiled nature.
Right.
Except for in some parts. But
just like Skarg.
Yeah, Skarg and like a couple of other places that are like pretty unspoiled, but most of it has been in some way populated or something like that. But they believe that as part of their religion, someone will serve as the harbinger for this old god, this Ilharg, and the raised boar will rise from his slumber and stampede across Ravnica, leveling every square inch of the city in his wake and returning the world to true nature. That is their religious belief, and they hold a much more detached worldview from the rest of the guilds, who mostly just go in to break stuff just to break stuff. A lot of Zhurta are like, going in to break stuff is like not really that helpful, because end all be all, we're not going to be able to beat the city, but Ilharg can, so we should wait for him.
Right.
More passive of the Gruul guilds.
Yeah, because they're the only ones that, not the only ones that believe that, but they're the only ones that like are like really adamant about it, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, others venerate the old ways, but they don't see it as particularly important. Whereas, like, you know, the members of the Zhurta clan have always been led by shamans and omen seekers who, like, are certain that they are on the right path to reclaiming nature.
But, yeah, that's... I was gonna say, I don't know how much you want me to go into, like, what's going on with Alistair at the moment.
I mean, we can go into what's going on with him now. We can start from, like, some of the major story beats of the campaign.
He did Rock Chav, which is a holiday that can happen at any point in time, whenever the fuck we feel like, where you just run into the town and destroy shit.
As a group, it's like a bonding exercise. It's team building.
We celebrated my birthday and we did Rock Chav, and that was our first campaign. Except we totally got, well, it didn't get ruined. Just we also ran into everybody else at the same time.
Right.
And long story short, I got arrested, had to work with the rest of the party. And things kept happening where I'm like, okay, and then this is where Alistair's like not gonna like probably want to be attached to the story anymore. Except then we'd always find a way to keep him involved.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And like that's the thing, is I don't ever really look for ways to like write my character out of a story.
Sure.
But I always like try to keep it true to a character when I'm like, I'm no longer interested in this, or like this is when I should be looking for a way out so I can look for a way to get roped back in.
Right.
Because it happened very naturally where he got arrested, had to get out of jail, and they were like, if you work with these guys to go catch one of these other villains, then we'll...
A famous mob boss in Ravnica by the name of Krenko.
Then you can go home. And he's like, whatever, this is the easiest way to get home. So we did that, and he's like, okay, I'm never going to see these guys again. I'm just going to go home. So,
sure.
like, the end. So he went home. But while we were out and about doing the first mission, he met up with one of the current party members that he'd met in his backstory. Mm-hmm. Twice, very briefly. And he invited Alistair to a concert. So he's like, okay, I think I'll go to that. And so he went, and other members of my party went.
Yeah, because he met all of us at the time, and he was like, yeah, it'd be cool if you all could show up.
Yeah. And so then Alistair was like, they're probably not going to go, but they went, and then they made me hang out with them the entire time. To which he's like, okay, I'm just going to go home now, and I'm done. Except I gave one of our old party members, because she has now passed away, I gave her a ride home, and then the next day she invited me to a tea party.
Yeah, that would be...
What a ballsy little girl.
Why to invite a member of the Gruul to a tea
party?
I mean, you were her friend. She wanted you to come over for tea.
So I went.
You guys were nice.
Yeah, I went. I guess she wasn't wrong. I did go. And then I was like, okay, this is the end. I'm going to the tea party, and I'm done. But then it turned out to be that's when she died. There was like an ambush, and she like... It turned into the whole plot, basically. That was the plot hook. And so now Alistair was like just super glued to this thing. He wants revenge for Katya, but he's also simultaneously like getting more attached to his party day by day by day.
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting things about all of this character development in general is like this is a disparate party of a bunch of weirdos that for all intents and purposes it shouldn't make sense that you are all together and that you are all enjoying each other's company and getting into the chaos and disorder that you guys are getting into, but it's working and you guys are like friends, and it's so fascinating to me.
See, that's another thing too, is that it's just so weird, because that's kind of my favorite thing, is that he kept having opportunities to duck out, but he kept coming back for one reason or another, and it was always a connection with a different person.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I'm gonna go, and then somebody invited him to a concert, so he went to the concert, and he's like, okay, now I'm done. And then they're like, oh, you should just come to this tea party, and it was the girl that reminded him, like, of his little sister, so he's like, fine, I'll go to the tea party, it's fine. Mm-hmm. And then she died, so he's like, okay, now I have to get revenge for them killing somebody I liked.
Right, which is now a whole fucking thing.
So then I just spend more and more time with these other people that in no way, like, would I have thought to spend time with anyways. Mm-hmm. And I ended up liking them. And now I'm at a point where I'm, like, straight up betraying my clan, pretty much, to help them.
Right.
Which is why in the beginning I said I'm a Gruul for now, because I don't know what the fuck is gonna come of this.
Well, I mean, like, think about it from the Gruul perspective, and this is more of like maybe Alistair would come to this conclusion, or maybe he wouldn't. But like,
he might have already.
Can anyone tell him that he's not Gruul?
No.
That's like the point of the Gruul, right?
Yeah, no one can. Except for like Borborygmos, but it doesn't mean I'm not Gruul.
It just means that if they see you, they'll kill you.
Yeah.
But if you can fight them, then they can't fucking stop you.
Yeah, like, I don't think there's a point where he's gonna stop being Gruul. I think there's a point where he's potentially gonna not be a part of his clan anymore.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I could see that.
Like, when I'm saying that he's not gonna be Gruul anymore, I mean, like, he's not gonna be, like, stereotypically Gruul. Because we haven't really talked about, like, Trogs. Trogs are, like, Gruul that don't have clans. They run around the Rebel Belt by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people who are independent, exiled, or cast out from their clans, or, in some rare cases, Trogs are sometimes the remnants of either small clans that tried to start off and were picked up, or picked apart one by one, or the remnants of once foundational clans that have since mostly, if not entirely, died off, and all that's left is the descendants of the last survivors.
But
it's a hard Scrabble world out there in the Rebel Belt.
Yeah, he's
dragons and worms and monsters.
We're working on it. We're in the Rebel Belt right now.
You are currently in the Rebel Belt. You found your way to a war horn has been called. So the domain of the Bolrak clan, the clan of exclusively giant and large folk, is now abandoned, and you guys just stopped off there, which is really fun.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna have a little hot springs day in their little toe warming baths.
Is that what those are for? Their toes?
Mean, probably their feet, maybe, but they're giants. So we're talking these guys are hill giant, stone giant. They're like we're not talking about these are 10-foot guys. These are 32-foot guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, these are big giants.
Big boys.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alistair's spending too much time in the city and is apparently very charming despite having a stump charisma.
I mean, your charisma's not negative, is it?
It's a 1.
It's +1?
Yeah.
+1's fine. You're not abrasive. You're just not, charming to certain kinds of people.
My clan leader doesn't like me very much.
But that's because you're a threat to her power.
Right. The right hand of Borborigmos likes me. Gone.
Ganshokta, yeah.
He likes me.
He does like you a lot. You remind him of his daughter.
So... Yeah, there's not too much else to say about Alistair except he's fucking out there trying his best. He's very anxious. He's kind of angry and easily flustered, kind of shy.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's
kind of a softie.
Yeah. I think we talked about it in the other questionnaire episode that he kind of has a tsundere attitude.
Oh my god, yeah, definitely.
Every here and again,
it's
where
perfect.
he pretends that he doesn't care about things that he does care about. A very adorable, shy but angry and anxious, gay girl boy.
Yeah, what a sweet boy. For the other party members, which unfortunately
we don't have them to hear talk about.
But I can give a brief overview of their characters. Well, you've heard a little bit about them from some of the other podcasts if you've listened to them. If you haven't, now you'll know a little bit more about them before you learn some of their deepest, darkest insecurities and their guiltiest pleasures, I guess.
That's one of the questions.
That was one of the questions. One of them is Hex. Hex is she's a member of the Is It League. She is a artificer, a technologist, a sort of a huckster saleswoman. She mostly made a living kind of as a snake oil salesman, selling magically enchanted trinkets, because artificers can imbue a certain amount of items with magical potential, and she'd sell them, even little things like little music boxes or mini globes or compasses and things like that would work for a time, and then when she made new ones, they would stop working. So she would mostly spend her time selling things and then picking up shop and moving to a different part of the city once people started to catch on to her grift. And that was a good way to make money for a while on top of her work with the Is It League. She is a artillerist, which means that she makes weaponized cannons out of different materials. For the most part, she makes stuffed animals that shoot flamethrowers and laser blasts, which is kind of an adorable thing about her. She wears a big, circus-style hat. She's got, a very, elaborate sort of, carnival ringleader kind of attire, and she is a crack shot with a rifle, because guns are on Ravnica, which is an interesting D&D
and something she said at least more than 3 times is the top hat stays on during sex.
Oh yes, yeah, that has happened.
She's very, very, very attached to that hat.
Yes, she is. She tends to take it off and then put things inside of it and put it back on, and they never seem to fall on her head for some reason.
Yeah.
A little mystery hat. But she is sort of the artillerist, the dramaticist, and also, I would argue, the hardest worker of any of the members of our party. There is a bit of a secret life to her, though. Mm-hmm. Because Hex is actually a member of a race that, and I didn't mention a race before. Hex appears human.
Yeah.
But she is actually a member of a race that absolutely should have been in the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, but you will instead need to go to the Eberron Rising from the Last War supplement to find this race. Canonically, they exist on Ravnica. Changelings. Natural, amorphous, body non-specific gray creatures that can, as a will, wear a full body transformation of whatever they imagine. They can essentially shapeshift themselves into anything completely at will. She uses this to blend in and develops a variety of personalities in different places. For a brief period of time, she served as a Rakdos, a somewhat insane Rakdos cult member named Red. She's currently exploring the Rebel Belt with you in the form of a young and rambunctious, energetic Gruul boy named Gar. And when she's running her other side hustle as a cloaked and mysterious male vampire named Damien. In all of these forms that she can take, in the many various forms she wears temporarily, she uses this to perform her secondary responsibilities as a secret agent of the Dimir. Bless you.
Crack my back.
Yeah, right. Hex has had some struggles with her responsibilities with the Dimir. She has a close attachment to her master, esteemed vampire assassin Etrata. And recently the party has been drawn into that backstory a little bit, but Hex seems a little bit... we got the sense that Hex seems like she is annoyed by the tedium of some of Dimir's methods, but seems very, very attached to the improvements and the respect that she receives as a member of the Izzet. So I'm curious to explore where that goes.
You know what I'm curious about?
What's that?
Excuse me. Alistair eventually, when he becomes strong enough of a druid, he gets shape change, I think it is. Where he can like change his appearance at will.
What's that?
Alistair, when he gets to be strong.
Oh, when he's 14th level. Yeah, because he'll be able to use Alter Self to kind of do the same thing. Yeah.
So he can kind of do something similar. He can like make himself look any particular way, as long as it's like not a huge like transformation like size wise, I think. Yeah. I'm very curious to see if that freaks Hex out or not.
Oh yeah, I'm interested as well to see how that plays out.
Because I can change shapes all the time. Yeah. But it's only into animals.
Right. So she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I do people, you do animals. We're different.
We're different things, for sure. But I'm curious, like, when Alistair figures out how to do that, and he shows up as, like, a second Hex, or, like, a second, like, Angelo, or, like, another Kaz, or something like that, and he's like, hey, look, I can do it, too. Yeah. I don't know how she's gonna act. I don't know if she's gonna be happy, or angry, or like
confused,
like super freaked out, like if she's like, whoa, like, or if she won't fucking care. Like, I'm just really curious.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And it's kind of unique in a lot of ways too, because like the party uses disguise magic often. Yeah. Angela uses disguise self all the time. You shapeshift into animals. She can just shapeshift. Yeah. Hex is like, I'm curious to see her reaction to like the constant use of shapeshifting within our party in general, and especially with the disguise self. Like, does the fact that Hex can put their hand on Angelo's shoulder in his disguise and pass through it and feel the part below, like where the shoulder is different, does that make it not as like weird?
Well, my real thing is that Hex and Alistair notices this is because he keeps fucking running into it head first and being stupid.
Sure.
Like, he knows that... Because he does tattoos. And so when he offers other people tattoos, Hex always gets really excited about potentially getting a tattoo, but then being like, oh, I guess it really doesn't matter. Because she could, like, make it go away or, like, reappear on her own regardless.
Right.
So she doesn't need to get a tattoo.
Exactly.
But, like, I feel like it's something she wants to be able to do. And I feel like her being a changeling and, like, not knowing if she can have kids or, like, if she had parents or, like, a bunch of these different things, like, makes that experience kind of weird for her. Speaking on my own accord, I don't know all these things for sure. This is just what Alistair's picked up by context. And so he's not sure if, like, when, like, yeah, Angelo can, like, change his appearance and she can, like, she knows that's an illusion.
Yeah. Right.
But if I can change my actual body shape and be a different person,
yes,
and she can touch me and I'm different, if that's going to be weird. If she's like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, like, how that interaction happens to a changeling. Like, what does that make a changeling? Especially, like, with the specifically the character, like, Hex's own memory gaps around these things. Like, is that something that she, like, was she, like, that's the thing, is, like, what is that question? Like, am I, like, Alistair, but I just forgot about it?
Yeah,
like,
or something
what does it
like
mean?
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because, yeah, I'm just, it could be no reaction at all. She might just be like, oh, okay, it's magic. Like...
Sure, yeah, she may look at it that way, exactly.
Like,
but I am curious.
You can turn into a dog. Why should I be weirded out that you can be a different dude?
Yeah, you can be
like,
a completely different person, right?
But I'm curious if that's gonna, like, make her like me more, like me less, not give a fuck, or, like, be weird, or be...
It's only one way to find out.
Get there.
Hell yeah, I'm very...
10, or not 10 levels. In like 6 or so fucking levels.
It's like 8. You guys are level 6 now.
Oh,
so.
shit, okay.
Yeah, so it's level 8. Or it's 8 more levels to get to that point. So yeah, decent. You're not even halfway there. It's going to be a while.
It'll be a bit.
The next character, of course, for our little campaign is Kaz, shortened version of Casimir. He is the sort of oddball for the group in the fact that it is so strange how well him and Alistair work together despite their guilds.
Oh, yeah.
But Kaz is a member of the Boros League. Boros Legion. He is specifically, and this is one that we didn't go over in the beginning, he is specifically a sergeant of the Wojek League. The Wojek are like a branch of the Boros, whereas there are regular police and military. Imagine the Wojek as like the specialist task force. Their responsibility is to find like greater looming threats that rope in all of the inner workings of Ravnica, and they're the ones most likely to recruit individuals from outside of the Boros Legion to work together with to undermine the grand global scheme. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, to a member of the Wojek League. And he didn't start out that way. When this campaign first started, Kaz was very much like a rank and file, like street cop, good guy, soldier of the Boros, like trying to be the hero, but also being, in his case with his intelligence as dump stat, a little bit too naive to understand some of the extreme methods used by some of his coworkers and compatriots.
Some of the extreme intricacies of the law.
Yeah, especially. He kind of, like, the law kind of was like, whatever, as long as I get the bad guy, and I'm pretty sure I know who the bad guy is. But interestingly enough, I find that his transition into the Wojak League kind of like I feel like, and we've had this conversation personally about Kaz before, but I feel like, and this is a really interesting perspective, and I'd love to hear Ryan's take on it. Hopefully you're listening right now. I'd love to hear your take on this eventually. But I see Kaz as being the kind of person who probably, when he was surrounded by a lot of the like inherent prejudices that come up in a military police environment, where you start to look at like the people that you fight against on a day-to-day basis as the other and the enemy instead of as other people, and those sort of biases and like inherent racism, that kind of becomes a part of the propaganda system of your guild. Kaz is interesting because I feel like he just kind of was like, yeah, okay, and kind of like nodded along with it. I think he might have just been a little bit too dumb to get
propaganda to work on.
Yeah, like I think he kind of like it. He didn't get wrapped up in it, and like I think he did when he had no contact with members of the other guild, but he was given a mission specially by a very esteemed compatriot of the Boros Legion very early on. Work with these troublemakers to get them out of their sentence, and also use them as a resource to capture Krenko, one of the plane's biggest mob bosses. And you guys wildly succeeded at doing so. And I think that was the first point where Kaz probably realized, like, oh, I don't know if a bunch of us grunts could have gotten this done, but there are so many different powers and skill sets and abilities and techniques that these other weirdos have that I've never seen before. And it opens up all sorts of new ways to solve trouble. And then it kind of opened the doors for him, like, looking at other situations, too, and being like, oh, no, like, Hex would be good at dealing with that. Oh, Alistair would be good at dealing with that. Like, he just kind of, like, immediately took into this, like, team leader perspective. And I think that as soon as that happened, I feel like all of the prejudice just flew out the window. Like, I feel like he immediately was just like, oh, wait, all of those guys were just dumb and not paying attention. Like, you can totally work with these guys, and as long as you're all fighting for the same thing, which is the right thing, because it's the thing I'm fighting for,
right,
then we're good.
It's like when you leave a child alone with a food, and you're like, don't eat it until I come back, and you, like, leave them on recording, and they, like, keep looking at the door and looking at the food, and they're like, I shouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
And then they just eat it.
Yeah.
Forget it. It's delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was so interesting because I think Ryan I think he's told me straight up. It might have just been something he, like, hinted at, but I feel like he's told me straight up that, like, when he envisioned the character, he was like, no, this is, like, rank and file, like, straight-laced Boros guy. And he had one successful mission where praise for the first time in his life was lavished upon him for his successes, and he's like, actually, fuck that shit. I'm going to work with these guys because every time I do, everyone tells me I'm great.
Yeah.
So,
fuck that.
Yeah.
This is my new team. Fuckface McGee and the Gun Woman.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so funny to watch him just, like, kind of slowly become this very rapidly become this very different person. I think that's so neat, and I love his interactions with the party. Another interesting little tidbit about him that has come up in our questionnaires and stuff, is that he actually he had a whole squadron that he trained with, which included his younger brother Shashka, and his younger brother actually ran off from the Boros the day before graduation.
Oh yeah, they had academy together, and he ran away from graduation to go be part of the group.
Yeah, he ran off into the rubble belt, and you are a great opportunity for him to get his brother back, whom he hasn't seen in a few years, because he's just been off in the Gruul Wilds.
Especially because during our first session...
Oh, that's right, I remember this.
The whole thing was I was doing a rock chop for my birthday.
Yeah.
And Hex was trying to transport a thing, like an experiment they were testing.
Yeah.
And Kaz was part of...
A temperature-controlled device.
Yeah, that was for Hex.
Yeah.
And Kaz was trying to escort Krenko as a guardsman for, like a like a liaison or whatever.
Basically, they were transferring him from one prison to a more secure prison.
Right. But then I rock chaved in the middle of it, and a bunch of shit went to crap.
Absolutely.
And while we were all fighting, all the Gruul were fighting the Boros, and Kranko escaped, and Hex tried to run, and then Gruul were chasing Hex, my sister in particular, was chasing Hex away, and then as I went to round a corner, there was this one Gruul guy in particular that I didn't like because he was being a cunt bag.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to, like, overwhelm Kaz in particular. And I killed him. The Gruul guy, not Kaz.
Right.
Because I was like, he's an asshole.
But he was trying to kill Kaz. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and I'm not... Alistair in particular is not a big fan of straight up murder for no reason.
Right.
Which is weird, I think.
It was an interesting sign into who he was going to become.
Yeah. He wanted to smash buildings and have fun.
Right.
He didn't want it to be a giant slaughter. He didn't want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
It just so happened we ran into a giant thing of Boros people. So he killed the Gruul member and then ran. And one of the things Alistair used to do a lot was he used to wear a fox mask around.
Right. To hide his face in the city.
Yeah. And Kaz called me Shashka. He thought I was his brother at first.
Right.
Then Hex's, like, experiment blew up while we were chasing her around, and then we all went to jail. And he very quickly found out because they took my mask that I was not his brother. But then I went home after dealing with them for a little while, and his brother had teamed up with Domri Raid and was trying to, like, recruit my clan into a weird bit of business he was trying to do. And so then I went back and I was like, hey, I was like, you called me that name before. I saw the guy that you were talking about, I think.
Right.
And so then, in lieu of a legal rock chav.
Right. Which was, well, not legal, but
air quotes legal.
Sanctioned by the present officer of the law.
They let us do a rock chav, like a really big one.
Yeah. The Rakdos were involved, too.
Yeah, we got the Rakdos on board.
They started a little street show in the middle of the rich district, and all the Gruul came out of the fucking...
woodwork.
Oh, yeah, they were, like, hiding behind benches in the garden and shit, and they just popped up and started wrecking shit.
Yeah.
That was pretty
good. And we attacked an Orzhov church. It was such a good time.
Yeah.
But in exchange for that...
And by attacked, we mean you cast Fog Cloud and turned into a big wolf, and then just sprayed at half of the bad guys in the entire dungeon I made.
So everybody else could sneak in the bottom and, like, go kill all the old ghosts.
Yeah, which they did a great job. You almost died so much.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that you had, like, 80 extra hit points from your 2 wolf wild shapes, you would have been fucked.
Also, the extra hit points and that's the help from Angelo with he sang me a song, gave me inspiration, and used fire breath.
Oh yeah, he drank a potion of fire breath that he had. Yeah.
And then after all of that, Hex came in so clutch with her machine gun.
Oh yeah, because then they were running down the hall. She's just like, turret.
Yeah, like
hello.
So many times I could have died that I just didn't. Like, I was dancing with death at that point.
Yeah. Offhanded mention too, that also is related to that fight and, like, other fights with Hex. Huh. Artillerist, the Artificer subclass that Hex is, really awesome, fun class, even better in a world with guns.
Yeah.
Ravnica has guns, and, like... She's got a rifle that deals so much fucking damage from so far away. And sure, it has the misfire chance, but Kyle just learned that it misfired last session because he hasn't rolled bad enough to damage the gun yet.
But what I was saying in the first place was something. Fuck. What was I saying? Oh yeah, in exchange for the rock chav.
Oh yeah.
Kaz made a deal with Alistair for me to try and bring his brother home. Which led to weird interactions between the two of us. I guess not weird interactions.
Yeah.
It led to at least the one where I, did some digging on his brother.
Right.
And then I called him to the coffee shop, and he came. And me and him
hung out at the coffee
together
shop.
alone in a coffee shop and had a conversation about how I might not be able to save his brother alive, but was gonna fucking try my best.
Sure.
But, just think about that. A Boros and a Gruul sitting in a coffee shop at the same table alone together, and they're not killing each other?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. The interactions between your party just go counter to, anything you would expect, but it all makes so much sense in context. Yeah. It's so cool.
It's so neat. I love seeing it.
Oh, I love Ravnica. Such an interesting... I love big cityscapes. I'm a huge fan of Waterdeep in Forgotten Realms.
I hate cities.
And that's what makes Ravnica so interesting, because I developed this campaign, and you were even, tossing around character ideas, and I'm like, I know you like Alistair as a character. Mm-hmm. Why don't we find a way to make Alistair fit in Ravnica? Because then, even though it's a big city setting, and I know you're not going to like it, you'll at least be playing a character that you enjoy, and you'll have a good reason to be a member of the one guild you actually seem to like at the time. The only ones you liked were the ones that weren't connected to the city at all.
Yeah.
And it was nuts because, very quickly, you kind of just, went all the way in on the roll.
Yeah.
And now, it seems like you actually enjoy Ravnica. And
I love Ravnica. I fucking baby let it rip.
Yeah. That was the thing, is that, it just took a couple of sessions and you were just like, oh shit, no, this is actually dope.
Oh, it didn't take more than one.
Really?
I loved it.
Yeah.
But also, you didn't talk at all about Angelo or Katya. We keep talking about Angelo and you didn't introduce him.
I'll start with Katya first.
Because she came first.
Because she did come first. She was a character that I had run with them as a member of sort of the early session.
She was there when the bomb exploded.
Yes.
First session.
Yes, exactly. She happened to be just I think she was
picking up food at a taco stand.
Yeah, I think she was just buying street food and making her way back to the conclave. She was just going for a morning jog. And then
Poor lady.
She just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But she was an absolute sweetheart. She was a wood elven Selesnian cleric, a priestess, and she actually the party didn't really get a good sense of it necessarily because it didn't have the terminology until after everything that had happened with her. But she was a world speaker, which is a very rare and powerful sort of harbinger, as someone who is born into the Celestia and has the innate ability to almost commune with the world's soul. Yeah. They can connect with the ley lines of nature and draw great power from it, and they're usually a good omen, a herald of greatness. Mm-hmm. And she was just kind of okay, that's neat. I still want to go get breakfast.
You can talk to the world soul, but you still gotta eat food.
Yeah, she's just chilling. That's the thing, is it she wasn't oh, I'm a person with a grand destiny. She was just kind of I just like to hang out with my friends, and sometimes I have to go to important conversations with important people, and they tell me I need to try to meditate on the world and stuff, and I do that, and it's so nice and it's so relaxing, and then I go home and I water my flowers. She's just happy to be alive. Yeah. That's her whole thing.
She was a member of the Selesnya.
Yeah, she's a member of the Selesnya Conclave. This is a little bit of my DM stuff coming in, so I will let this one slip. I created the character fully intending to kill her.
Evil bastard.
She was a player character that I brought into the story because I was as a backup scenario, because these characters, you all picked characters whose specifically were located in areas of Precinct 4. Precinct 4...
Completely accidentally.
Yeah, exactly. All in one place. Super convenient. Precinct 4 is the Rubble Belt and its entrance. So, all the Gruul territory. Uh-huh. And...
Little.
Oh my god, the ferrets are going again. The Izzet scientific laboratories in the head of the Izzet, which contained within it the apartments that Hex lives in.
Yeah.
Right next to Gruul territory. And then Sunhome, the fortress of the Boros Legion, and the place that Kaz operated out of. All three of you are right there, and also your group was directly waging conflict and war against both of them on a near constant basis. So because of that, I expected your characters to not really get along at first. Katya was my way out of that. If you guys didn't get along, you would at least all love her because she was so goddamn lovable. And then, when I killed her, you'd be forced to work together. Turns out I didn't need to do that, but it was great storytelling, so I did it anyway.
It was the last ripcord for Alistair, though.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing. It was like, you were hesitant still, and as soon as she died and everyone else was on board, you were on board, too. Because the thing is, and that's what kind of drives the whole story, she isn't dead. Because of her status as a world speaker, the villains of this campaign want to use her to connect with the soul of the world, to expand upon their plans. They need her, so they took her soul. They have her soul, and you guys, your goal is kind of to rescue her. But that unfortunately meant that I only got to play my sweet Selesnian nature cleric for about 3 levels.
About 2 episodes.
Yeah, it was 2 episodes of the campaign. They leveled up at the end of campaign of the first episode because they uncovered enough information about Krenko. Then when they beat Krenko, they leveled up again. I never actually played her as a level 3 character. She died at level 3 right after we leveled up.
Right.
But she was killed by a what you eventually discovered to be a cult of the Orzhov, and that kicked off this whole secret plot about the members of the Whispers of Agurum and the resurrected spirit of Dimir Perrin Sadek and all of this strange mystery surrounding this ringing bell that Kaz hears every time he casts his warlock spells. And
yeah, didn't I hear that too?
You heard it when he cast a spell on you recently.
Yeah.
He cast a spell targeting you, and both of you heard the ringing. Yes.
Do other people hear the ringing too?
Only when you are the target of one of Kaz's best spells.
Huh. Weird.
Yep. And Kaz tends to cast a lot of either offensive spells or spells on himself.
Right.
So it's usually NPCs that hear it, or it's him that hears it.
Yeah.
But when he targets you guys, you got, I think what did he hit you with, Beacon of Hope last time or something?
He kept hitting me with Lesser Restoration.
Oh, Lesser Restoration, that's right. Oh yeah, to get rid of some of your fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah, from running.
Because we're going through the Rubble Belt, so I'm a giant elk, and I'm running for 10 hours-ish a day with everybody on my back to get through the Rubble Belt as fast as we can. So, Hex and Alistair are casting Expeditious Retreat.
Right.
Or Longstrider. Not Expeditious Retreat. They're casting Longstrider on me.
Oh yeah, because Longstrider lasts an hour.
So that I can run faster for longer. I already have mobile.
Yeah, so you're already fast as fuck.
Fast as fuck, boy. But after running for like 6 hours, I got tired. So Kaz kept Lesser Restoring me so that I could run more, and then Lesser Restoring me so I could run more, and then...
Yeah. And then eventually it burnt you out just a little bit too much, but...
And now we're at B Hot Springs, which I am about to just go lay in and be so happy about it.
Absolutely. While the rest of the world is falling apart around you, and you're chasing down a crazed war leader who maybe...
Well, I didn't say I was going to not reflect on my trauma while I did so.
Of course. Just, you got to make sure you're soaking while you do.
My body's going to be so sore.
Oh, for
sure. I ran
for
for 10 hours.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if I was an elk or not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course you're going to be tired.
Lesser Restoration be damned.
Yeah. No, it's going to be it's going to be for the best for you guys to be able to rest there, because that's a shitty ride. It's
going to soak until I'm a prune.
Absolutely. But yeah, the plot of Ravnica is starting to thicken. I'm really interested to see you guys get further in. You've met all these really interesting NPCs now. You've met Mr. Taz.
You didn't describe Angelo still?
Oh fuck! I still haven't described Angelo. We ended with Katya. So Angelo was mentioned before by you earlier on in this discussion.
Well, he's part of our party now. We can't just skip over Angelo.
Yeah, right, of course. Because he kind of became the character. One of the things that we do in our campaigns, and I know there's a lot of, like some people don't like it. There's lots of controversy around it. Which is the concept of a DMPC.
We won't let Ken not play a DMPC.
Well, that's really what it comes down to. Is I went into this, like, Katya was an NPC that I gave to them, and I was like, I'm going to play her as an NPC to help them, because Krenko's Way, which was in the book, was like a notoriously difficult adventure for first and second level characters, and that was where I was starting them. I gave them the healer because none of them had a good healer, and I didn't want to murder their characters right out. I wanted to at least give them a fighting chance. So I played the character, and then I knew I was going to kill her off. Angela was introduced as an NPC. And once Katya was dead, I'm like, well, that's it. And then everyone else was like, well, what about we're going to get Angelo to help us, though, right? And I was like, fuck, all right, never mind. I'm like, yeah, of course he's going to want to help you. And they're like, yeah, good, well, we thought so. Because, like, how are you not playing a character? Yeah. I can't get away with not playing a character.
The thing really of it is...
Even when I went into this campaign wanting to not play a character.
Yeah, you've done that a few different times. Yeah. But we always, like, you'll introduce a character to us... And we like them so much that we adopt them and we keep them with us.
Yeah.
So you might as well just make them a character sheet and just play them because, like, he's still technically, like, an NPC.
Yeah.
But he's a DMPC because it's like, he's not leaving us. We're not letting him.
Right.
Like, he's like, we're like, you're part of this group now, bitch. Yeah. Be in here.
Yeah. Melisana was, like, in our first campaign, she was one of the characters. I'm like, I'm playing this character. And I played her through Lost Mines of Phandelver. And then I was like, okay, that'll be it. And then you guys were like, is Melisana coming back? And I was like, no, Melisana's not coming back. But I'm like, okay, what if I give them a real NPC? I introduced Kellen at that point, but he was level 1. And you guys were level 5. I was just like, this is it. And you guys were like, this is our baby now. We're gonna like teach him how to be a big, strong boy. And we're going to show him the world. And then I was like, no, he's in it now. And then all of a sudden I was playing 3 fucking characters.
Yeah.
And then same thing with this one. Like, well, not really the same thing with our other one. Like, there was no way I wasn't going in with Arya because like, everyone's playing their kids, and you guys weren't going to let me not play one of the kids.
Yeah.
So Ravnica was my first real opportunity to be like, okay, no DMPCs for me. And then everyone was like, who the fuck you thought?
Well, that's the thing though, is it's just. The real reason that DMPCs are mostly polarizing, and we still haven't talked about who Angelo is. We're going to do that.
Oh my god, I know. I keep getting distracted.
But the reason that we don't think... I feel like the reason we don't think it's that polarizing is because you don't make it, like, unbalanced.
Sure.
Like, just because you're playing an NPC...
It's not like I'm the hero of the show who's solving all of your problems for you.
Like, you're not like, oh, I'm Angelo now, and, like, Angelo's the best, and we're, like, you're playing, like, in most of the times when you would play a DMPC, they were a support class, and we didn't have one.
Right.
So, like...
I, like, exclusive, I'm like, I'm gonna play a cleric or a bard.
Yeah.
Like, every time.
Which is, like, it's fine if you want to play a cleric or a bard, like, they make very good characters, but... They make very, like, integratable DMPCs.
Yeah, because they're support characters, so, like, I don't have to be like, oh, I'm gonna, like, go in and optimize them and be this crazy strong character. Yeah. I can just be like, I don't want to, like...
This is why this character is interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he's more NPC-like.
Right. I make him an interesting character for them to interact with and roleplay with, and then in combat, I mostly have them use abilities that make the other party members shine. I'll do, like, fear effects that line up the enemy so they'll get right into the path of your destruction. I'll use buffs on you guys. I'll improve your rolls.
That's a weird thing, too, is, like, especially with Angelo.
Yeah.
Like, I suppose not as much with Melisana or, like, Arya.
Yeah.
Them I see as, like, your characters.
Yeah. Well, that's... Yeah, and they kind of became that over time.
While you play Angelo, and he's, like, technically, like, your character, you control him.
Yeah.
I see him more as an NPC than anything.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, for sure.
Because he... like, can't, like, I don't know, like, it's just, like, doesn't seem like he seems like a character you'd make, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know, he feels different.
Yeah. And that was it was a little bit intentional, too. I wanted him to feel a little bit different from that. But what's interesting about Angelo, so Angelo's whole thing, I don't know if we've ever in this particular podcast mentioned his guild at all. Angelo is a member of the Cult of Rakdos. Mm-hmm. He is a performer. Specifically, he is in a punk band with 3 other members of the Rakdos. They're kind of like their own independent sideshow band, though Angelo does have a sister, who he's referenced, mm-hmm. who is a little bit more involved with the inner workings and deep responsibilities of the Cult of Rakdos. Angelo is... he's like got like the dark kind of wavy hair, kind of like a tan-ish skin tone. Mm-hmm. He always wears this like mask, this Rakdos style like frayed, like dark-eyed mask, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Over the top of his face. He has like this really cool like black and red outfit with this like long kind of feathered cape.
It's like a cloak. Yeah, it's like a little cloak of feathers, like a half cape.
Yeah. He's got a big, fancy, fucking, like, metal-style skull-shaped guitar with the bottom part of the guitar where, like, you tie a strap around it. It's just a fucking skull that he just, like, latched onto there. And it is a magic guitar, of course. Mm-hmm. It's the focus for his spells. And he primarily got involved with the party because he has, like, seen from a distance, briefly interacted with Alistair, mm-hmm. a couple of times throughout their childhood and their history, mm-hmm. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, they've interacted with each other. But
very, very briefly is the thing.
Yeah, you glanced at each other from across a room.
Yeah, twice. Like I met him when I was 6. Met very loosely.
Yeah.
Like I saw him when I was 6 years old on the street.
Right.
And took notice of him, and then that was about that. And then when I was 18, I went back out to the city with my dad.
Yeah.
And met him, and he gave me a flyer for a concert.
Exactly. And he was like giving out like concert like tickets and stuff to random people that he thought would be cool. And that's kind of how you guys got interacted with each other. Is like he saw your party as well and was like, "Hey, I got this show going on." He was like playing a little bit at a tavern you guys went to in the first mission, and he was like, "Oh yeah, come see my carnival. Come see my show that I'm putting on. Like I'm doing a big concert." So he kind of invited you guys to that, and that was how he ended up getting roped into the party. Angelo is a bit of an elusive figure. Mm-hmm. He likes to keep his personal business very personal. Mm-hmm. He is slow to trust. He's got a bit of a seedy history, as Kaz has noticed. In an emergency, they needed to find a place to lay low for a little while after your group actually murdered a guy.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like the group would disagree with you.
He was an asshole, but you did commit murder.
No, I feel like the group would disagree because I murdered someone.
That's true. You're the one that did the murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the group didn't murder anybody. I killed a guy.
Yes. You grabbed him by the collar and jumped out the window as a maca, landed hard on the ground, almost breaking your maca form, but not quite, and just absolutely crushed his neck into oblivion.
Oh, I didn't just crush his neck. I fucking, like, for anyone who's squeamish around gore and, like, blood and stuff, like, just plug your ears for, like, and sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
I fell out of the window. I did the TikTok thing where you grab the guy around the neck and you lean back and you fall out the window.
Yeah.
Halfway down, I turned into a maca.
Right.
And then slammed into the ground, and it broke his arms and his legs.
Yes.
Because I remember making that joke about every day I break my arms and every night I break my legs.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It shattered his limbs.
There was bone peeking out from his skin on his appendages. Yeah.
He took a lot of damage.
But he was still alive. He went unconscious.
Yeah, and he took I think it was 2 less than double his maximum health from that fall.
He was dying.
He was going to die.
But he was not dead. He was going to die unless I healed him.
Right.
was the thing.
Right.
But I'd have to break Maka form to do that.
Right.
So I scooped him up in my mouth.
And the thing, maybe you would have if the fall had broken your form, but the form is quite hardy.
Yeah. I was fine. And also I couldn't give up my speed to help him.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe he'll just live.
Yeah, we'll just see what happens.
And so I picked him up in my mouth and started running. And then a fucking giant Azorius
Orzhov. He was an Orzhov
giant showed up.
A sentry giant.
And
who was meant to protect him.
Yeah. And he started chasing me. And so I didn't break my form to heal him. Because I was thinking about doing it. I stopped in the next alley over. And I was like, maybe I'll break the form and heal him. But then I started getting chased.
Yeah.
So I started to run. And he died in my mouth.
Yeah.
Failed all of his saves, died. Mm-hmm. I didn't save him. Couldn't escape the giant, so I dumped him on the ground and ran. Got hit with a dump. No, I didn't get hit with the dumpster yet. I got hit with the club. Left my form. Kept running. Got hit with the dumpster. Cast long strider on myself and fucking pieced out of there. Was what happened. I remember because it was very traumatic for me. But I think that was the first. Was that the first mission he went with us on?
That Angelo went with you on?
Yeah.
Kinda. No, because Angelo went with you too. He was part of the group leading them underground to the church.
Yep, he was.
Yeah, because he was underneath when you led everybody down. You went down the spiral stairs and then he chugged the fire breath potion and breathed up.
Yeah, that was the first
mission. And roasted a bunch of guys in their armor. Yeah, that was a good time. I don't think we've actually mentioned, you know that Alistair's a human Circle the Moon druid. Mm-hmm. We mentioned that Hex is a changeling artificer. She's an artillerist because she's got the cannons. We didn't mention that Kaz
was a celestial warlock.
Yeah, he is a celestial pact warlock for the Boros Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And he's specifically, he is celestial pact of the chain, because he has a familiar, actually a blink dog as his fey familiar, named Drago, and he can see and speak through his dog, and his dog can also have lightning teeth when he casts Shocking Grasp.
So fun.
It's pretty great. And then last but not least, we have Angelo, who, as a member of the Rakdos and a performer as well, he is a bard. He is specifically the Unearthed Arcana College of Spirits bard, soon to be updated because apparently it's getting released officially in Venricton's Guide to Ravenloft, which comes out next week from the time of recording.
Oh, fun!
So he's a College of Spirits bard. He does seances and lights candles and communes with the spirits of the dead to gain power and wisdom and stuff. So that's the party. We're getting close to the 2-hour mark. Is there any other little tidbits that you want to add about the Ravnica campaign or the introduction to the setting before we wrap up?
I feel like to top it off, we should just pick one of our favorite moments that we haven't talked about already.
Me and you each. I love that. Sure. Do you have one in mind?
I don't.
Okay. Let me think real quick about what one of my favorite moments in this campaign was. I actually think that there's a lot of really, really interesting and good moments that have happened. I think one of my personal favorites was when the group really came together during the church infiltration.
The church scene.
Because you guys had found out that the Orzhov were the ones responsible for taking Katya's soul. Or killing her and taking her soul. And you had began to try to follow clues and stuff. Hex ended up going to an Orzhov church following a sort of contact that she had made, and ended up meeting up with a kind of scrawny, nerdy looking character who also happened to be Katya's close friend, and sort of love interest. They were never really officially a thing.
Yeah, but she had a crush on him.
Yeah, she had a crush on him. That needly little scrawny
wee
baby.
little thing.
Yeah, he's kind of a skittish little guy, but his name is Stibor. Ravnica has like very like Eastern European like Slavic names. So his name is Stibor, Ctibor, and you met him and he kind of was like, hey, I can't really talk about a lot of stuff here because I'm bound by secrecy, but like, let's go meet somewhere. You kind of, Hex explained what happened to him, and he kind of was like, yeah, so there's this like evil cult that awoke in this ancient spirit and they want to take over all of Ravnica, and that's probably what they did. They probably got her because they need her, and they must be like doing their whole plan, so I can help you like infiltrate one of their like safe houses amongst the Orzhov. And so you planned that whole Rakdos in the nearby district to distract the police so that you could break into the church.
Right.
Which you managed to do. And your plan was to split the party into two groups. One of those groups was the downstairs infiltration team that broke in through a secret warehouse entrance using Stibor's help and attempted to, basically, there was more information that he could give that would potentially lead to rescuing Katya, but he wasn't allowed to speak about it because he was magically bound to secrecy. So he needed you guys to eliminate the source of his pact, which was an ancestor of his who basically owned his debt. So the group decided to split up into two groups, one distracting the people up front in the church so they wouldn't go downstairs, and the other infiltrating the downstairs. However, the infiltration group attempting to not encounter anyone consisted of everyone in the party except for Alistair. And the infiltration group fighting all of the bad guys in the dungeon was Alistair. So you kicked in the door, cast fog cloud on yourself, and then shapeshifted into a wolf. And you walked in this like nightmare wolf walking amongst the frozen mist. Most of them couldn't see anything, and then you just like roared through the battlefield, and like fire was spraying everywhere, and like radiant light and weapons were swinging, and you were just knocking people over, getting slapped down, and then thunder waving people and turning back into a wolf. And it was this whole big elaborate fight that was like 11 on 1 at one point, while the rest of the party was like racing against the clock, like dealing with the couple of threats that were hidden down there, finding false tombs that awakened indentured spirits that you then had to kill to make them silent, to not draw any attention towards you. You got battered pretty bad, but managed to get some people to escape. The group was pulling out all the stops to just try to like the bulk of the group was using their skills to race against the clock, and you were just holding it down. And that like onslaught was a completely different way than I ever expected your group to deal with that dungeon, and it was so interesting how you managed to do it. And really it put the potential of everyone on display. There's no way that you could have survived if it wasn't for Angelo and Hex. Because Angelo got the enemy reduced and boxed into that corner by using the fire breath to just kind of like pepper them while you ran. The ranged attackers that could still hit you while you were at barely any health and making your way down the hallway had to run into the path of Hex's turret in order to get to you. And so like the two of them together, like Hex was keeping the spirits away with the turret, Angelo was keeping them at bay with his like control spells and like taking some hits for you. Kaz was mostly just like doing as much investigation using his
Kaz was
Boros
like
skills.
Taking care of the big spirit at the time.
Well, that was the other thing too, is that like he realized the spirit was bound to the room, and he had the brilliant idea of being like, well, I need to see my target, so I'm going to use my familiar. So he blinked his blink dog into the room with the spirit to draw him out of the thing, and then cast Flaming Sphere through Drago. And the room was like a small boxed-in treasure chamber attached to a coffin, and the spirit couldn't leave his coffin. So he just circled the fire spear in the room and took Drago out and just fucking roasted the guy. Like it was really clever and a really good way to use his limitation to his disadvantage. I thought you guys were just going to bust into that room and be like, let's kick the spirit's ass, and you would have had a really hard fight because that room was like his lair. That would have been his advantages, and instead he just wasn't resistant to fire
Yeah.
And you just, like, Kaz just sat there for a full minute and roasted him alive while you guys bought him time and kept the enemies away from him so he could concentrate on the spell.
Yep.
Like, it was just like, you guys, it was your first time working as a group alongside Angelo. It was one of your earliest times working together as a group, and you guys just fucking went in brute force, like, fully red-aligned party, just knuckle bruising and chaos dragging your whole way through, and it worked really fucking well. And it was, like, it kind of set the stage for the whole campaign for me.
Right.
It gave me an idea of, like, oh, this is how they problem solve. Like, okay.
Except my favorite moment.
Oh?
Is the complete opposite of that.
Really?
It's the time we planned literally the worst.
Oh, okay.
When we realized that there was one guy left alive from that entire encounter that you literally just explained.
Mm-hmm.
And there's bounties out on us, so we had to, like, we tracked him down to a hotel.
Yeah.
We met in an alleyway.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan anything.
You sat in the alleyway for 5 minutes talking about a plan that you didn't do.
And then didn't do it. Hex and
for 5 minutes
Kaz,
in game. For like 45 minutes out of game.
Hex and Kaz stayed in the alleyway. Well, I turned into a spider and got in Angelo's pocket. And Angelo disguised himself and went into the Orzhov Hotel. He booked himself a room and went up to the room. We figured out where the guy that we were looking for was staying, and then went up to our room. And I gave the other people a very vague message of our room.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was the right one. I think I gave them the guy's room number and not our room number.
And you didn't specify which room it was.
Yeah.
You just gave them a piece of paper with a room number written on it.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then they open it and they're like, is this where we have to go to meet Alistair, or is this where the guy is?
Yeah.
And then you were like, fuck.
And I went back up into our room.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to... We got bored. Angelo and Alistair got bored. So they started to trash the room.
Mm-hmm.
For no real reason.
Because they had nothing better going on and they were nervous.
That's what happens when you leave us alone.
Exactly.
And then Kaz and Hex, much more gracefully, pretended to be a couple, got the information that they needed from the front desk, and went up to the room to see us destroying it, only to be followed by, we're like, okay, whoops, we didn't do any of our plan. We know where the guy is, let's go get him. We went down to go get him, and it turned into absolute chaos. I got into the room, I stole the guy, jumped out the window, killed him. They, triggered the alarm, basically.
Yeah.
A bunch of soldiers came out. Yeah. They all ran. We got separated. I ended up meeting with Hex. Angelo and Kaz were together.
Yeah.
We couldn't...
Separate from each other in the middle of a full, like alarm bells were ringing.
Oh, yeah.
Sky Griffins were patrolling.
It turned into a giant thing. Huge fiasco. Tons of noise. Lots of panic.
Giant was chasing you.
The giant was chasing me. Eventually I got with Hex and we ran away. Angelo and Kaz were together and they ran away, but got caught by Azorius, which they then fought and then ran away.
They didn't fight. Kaz tried to pull rank on them, and then they were like, yeah, you have no jurisdiction over us. And then Kaz was like, oh, shit, you right. And then used hold person to paralyze them, and then him and the Rakdos cultist ran away.
Yeah.
That's so fucking sus. And you haven't even mentioned amongst all that while you were on your way to go do the crime that you were planning,
you were being followed by
a Golgari bounty hunter who you had spotted watching you in the cafe a week before and probably has been there other times. And he followed you, and you knew he was following you, and you knew he was near you while you were talking about your plan, and then he had tried to escape into the sewers, and you chased him and lost him.
Yeah.
And then he was gone, and you were like, oops, and then did the plan anyway.
And haven't seen him since.
Right. So, like, you left fucking 7 loose ends. You have the loose end with that Golgari, and whoever the fuck the Golgari got hired by, you left a loose end with the Orzhov because you didn't kill any of those other soldiers. They saw the faces of the people who came upstairs and paralyzed them. So the Orzhov know what's up. The fucking Azorius know what's up because they're investigating whatever the fuck Kaz was doing and all this garbage. The fucking Golgari know what's up. Who knows what their stake in this whole thing is? You left that encounter a mess.
Yeah, and then we slept in 2 different locations and then met back up the next day, and it really hasn't been that long since.
Yeah.
So, that's my favorite moment.
Yeah, the absolute chaos that you created. I'm so excited to have that all blow up.
Our planning is either on point or it isn't.
Right. There's no in between. And that's how it works with red parties.
Yeah.
It's chaos or nothing.
That's Ravnica.
Yep, it's a beautiful thing. I love it. So yeah, with that is Ravnica. That is the tidbits of our Ravnica campaign. That is Ravnica as a setting. I highly recommend it for anybody who likes a big city noir kind of adventure. One thing that I personally enjoyed that I've seen a number of other DMs do as a great way to segue your own Ravnica campaign if you want to start exploring in this world. If you have a copy of Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the Waterdeep adventure module that's kind of like a city caper heist kind of thing, take that whole adventure and just reskin it for Ravnica. Use the city instead of Waterdeep. Replace some of the NPCs with major characters from Ravnica, their own villains and things like that. Just pick them up wholesale and drop them in. Just reskin that whole adventure. I've heard a lot of DMs say that it is an absolute blast and that Ravnica is a perfect setting for that adventure. So I highly recommend it if that's something you guys want to do. If not, come up with your own stuff. The guilds have plenty of cool lore and stuff for you to work with to make your own interesting campaign. Yeah. So I have to make a recommendation since we're reaching the end of our campaign. And the recommendation that I will give, since we started off and had this whole podcast to be about a D&D campaign in a magic world, we're going to talk about magic taking its first step into Dungeons and Dragons. So coming out in July. It is July 23rd, I believe, but previews will start earlier for those of you who enjoy Magic card previews. I believe previews start as early as June 19th. Magic the Gathering has announced that they are going to be releasing one of their newest card sets, a standard legal set called Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, which takes Magic's multiverse into the full-fledged setting of Faerun, which is the common setting of 5th edition. Mm-hmm. So far, they've shown off a couple of their card concepts for the set. The Dragon Queen Tiamat, Bane of the Worm Tamers in our previous adventures, has her own card in Magic the Gathering now as a 5-color dragon. There is a portable hole card. There's one for Power Word Kill. They've got a Halfling Innkeeper. They've got a Vorpal Sword. We've got Mind Flayers and Beholders on the card art. Driss Do'Urden's on the box, him and his Panther Guinevere. It's all just like good 5th edition flavored Faerunian fun wrapped up into Magic the Gathering. So if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons that's maybe never played Magic before or wanted to try, or if you're a fan of Magic that is developing a newfound interest in Dungeons and Dragons, I totally recommend that set. Me and Hannah have already done up a whole big budget. We're gonna buy a fuckload of it. Oh, yeah. We're going to open so many goddamn cards. We may even do a little, this is for the Magic fans out there, we probably are going to do a little custom cube with the set where we'll just cube all of the cards that we get and draft it repeatedly, but throw in a couple of custom made cards for some of our home drafts that are characters from our own campaigns and our Faerunian campaigns. So And maybe if some planeswalkers from other visiting campaigns wanted to make an appearance, they could show up in the set as well. So since it would make sense for that to happen. Yeah, so I totally recommend if you have a passing interest in either Magic or D&D, or just an interest in fantasy in general and are looking to pick up a new game. Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering, coming out July 23rd.
Yep.
So, yeah. Thank you so much, as always, for hanging out with us and listening to us talk about the things that make us happy on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. So much D&D lately.
It's been a lot of D&D's been on the mind. We've just been... and maybe I have even more fun stuff to tell you all about on this podcast coming up, because my brother has recently contacted me and informed me that he would be interested in having me set up a game for him and some of his friends.
Oh,
so
fun.
for the first time, I may actually have some family D&D stories. I've been trying to get my brothers to play Dungeons and Dragons for fucking ever, and it might finally be happening, and I'm so excited.
What's that?
Yeah, so thank you so much.
We'll be back for my episode next week.
Yes, we'll be back for Hannah's next week. Stay tuned and have a good week.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.